Have you ever heard your own name said like it's a footnote? Like, oh yeah, him too. Or, he's still around, I guess. That was my entire childhood. If you flip through our family photo albums, and yes, we still had the dusty old binders, because my mom thought digital storage was a government plot, you'd notice something strange. Every page was a shrine to my brother, Evan. Baby Evan on the hospital bed. Evan's first tooth. Evan's second tooth. Evan winning the second grade spelling bee with the word xylophone, despite spelling it with AZ. No one cared. And me? One blurry picture, off to the side, mid-blink at a Thanksgiving table. Cropped so hard, I looked like I'd photobombed the meal. I used to joke that I wasn't born, I just materialized one day with a backpack and mild resentment. Evan was the golden child. Not metaphorically. Literally. When he graduated from high school, my parents bought gold balloons that spelled out #one son. Not even congrats. Just that. Like I was ranked somewhere beneath the dog. By the time we hit our 20s, the dynamic had solidified like bad jello. Evan was the success, the charismatic, charming, golden retriever of the family who could spill soup on someone and be applauded for his quirky energy. He studied finance, of course, got a cushy consulting job straight out of college, of course, and called me once a year to say things like, "Still working at that garage or whatever? It's a tuning shop." I'd correct. Right. Fancy oil changes. Love that for you. I worked in car audio. High-end builds. Custom interiors. People brought me their Porsches, their G-Wagons, their classic rebuilds when they didn't trust anyone else. My business didn't have a neon sign. It had a reputation. I took pride in that. But Evan? He thought I was a glorified wrench with Spotify. I should have been used to it. The snide comments. The jokes, at holidays. The way Mom always told people. Evan's in finance, and Jordan, well, he works with his hands. Like I was a blacksmith in a Renaissance fair. The last time I saw them all together, it was Christmas 10 years ago. Evan had just bought a penthouse. Correction, our parents had loaned him $500,000, and he gifted them custom-engraved wine glasses that said, "Proud parents of a finance bro." They opened mine next. A Bluetooth speaker I'd tuned myself. Leather-wrapped, walnut case, built to match their home decor. Mom smiled politely and said, "Oh, sweetie, this would have been perfect 5 years ago." I left before dessert. Didn't slam the door. Didn't cause a scene. I just packed my coat, gave a nod to Grandma, and drove home in silence. That was the last family event I ever attended. People say success is the best revenge. I say silence is better. You know what happened after that. I stopped calling. Stopped texting. Stopped pretending the annual Merry Christmas group chat meant anything. And I got to work. I expanded the shop. Got a second lift. Partnered with a designer who specialized in custom interiors. We made headlines once, a Ferrari build for a retired NFL star. Clients started flying in from other states. Word of mouth became gospel. And me? I stopped caring whether Evan thought I was worth dinner conversation. 5 years ago, I bought a lakefront villa. Not huge. Just clean, modern, with radiant heating and floor-to-ceiling windows that made snowstorms look like art. A quiet retreat. Nobody in my family even knew I moved. They didn't ask. And I didn't tell. Then came last Saturday. Middle of January. Cold enough to make your nose hairs freeze. I was sipping espresso in my robe, reading a mystery novel by the fire. Bruno, my 70-pound mutt who thought he was a lap dog, curled up beside me. And then... knock, knock, knock. At first, I ignored it. Figured it was delivery. I'd ordered some soldering equipment and spare wiring the night before. But when the knocking turned into full-on pounding, I got up. Opened the door. And there he was. Evan. My brother. Standing on the porch like a lost UPS intern. His once perfect hair windblown, cheeks red, jacket too thin for the weather, and a duffel bag at his feet like he just stepped off a Greyhound bus. "Jordan," he said, like the name tasted strange in his mouth. I blinked once. Then smiled politely. And said, Sorry, are you the delivery courier? You look a little lost. His face dropped. I didn't move. Behind me, Bruno growled softly. Evan looked down at his bag, then back at me. Can we talk? That depends, I said. Are you here to mock my garage again, or did you finally blow up your golden life and decide the weird brother might be useful? He flinched like I'd slapped him. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to soften the blow. The last time I saw Evan unsure of himself, we were 12. He tried to cheat on a middle school math quiz and got caught, blamed it on a rogue calculator app. Then cried so hard the teacher gave him a tissue and told him he was brave for admitting it. That was the baseline. Evan messed up, the world bent backward to excuse it. So when I saw him standing on my porch, breath fogging up in the cold, duffel bag at his feet, looking like a Wall Street trader who just got kicked off his yacht, my brain stalled. This was a man who once said, and I quote, "Real estate is for people who failed at stocks." This was the man who, after my business made local news, commented under the article, "Not bad for a guy who used to glue speakers into cereal boxes." And now he was shivering like a raccoon in a wind tunnel. "Jordan," he repeated, voice strained. Can I come in?" I didn't answer right away. I looked him over. His jacket, some overpriced thin designer brand, was soaked. His shoes were meant for city pavement, not mountain snow. And his duffel bag, torn at the handle. This wasn't a visit. This was a collapse. Bruno sniffed the air behind me and huffed, clearly unimpressed. "Come in before you freeze your self-worth off," I said flatly, stepping aside. Evan staggered in like he expected the floor to reject him. He stood awkwardly in the foyer, dripping onto the hardwood. His eyes scanned the space, the open layout, the stone fireplace, the custom sound system tucked into the ceiling molding. He didn't say it, but I saw it on his face. He had no idea I'd built something this nice. I handed him a towel without a word. He toed off his shoes and muttered, "Thanks." We sat in the living room, silence thick. I sipped my coffee. He watched it like it was a lifeline. "You want one?" I asked. He nodded, and for the first time in his life, didn't make a snarky joke about how bougie I was for grinding beans fresh every morning. Progress, I guess. Over coffee, the dam finally broke. "I lost everything," he blurted. I said nothing. He blinked fast, like he couldn't believe I wasn't throwing him a lifeline immediately. "I got let go 6 months ago," he went on. "The hedge fund folded after some bad calls. I tried to freelance. I burned through my savings. My lease ended last week and Mom and Dad are in Europe for a wedding." "Which one?" He blinked. "Does it matter?" I shrugged. "Just wondering who gets the golden toast now." He looked away. Apparently, Mom and Dad hadn't picked up when he called. Maybe that surprised him more than the market crash. But me? I'd seen it coming for years. Evan built his identity on being untouchable, the favored son, the top earner, the one with a business card fancier than his diploma. But when you build your life on pedestal bricks, one little crack makes the whole thing collapse. "I didn't know where else to go," he muttered. I stirred my coffee. "Do you remember?" I said casually. "When I asked to crash at your place after my lease fell through in 2009? You told me your place was too minimalist to host guests." He looked up sharply. "I was a jerk. You were a brand." He winced. "I deserve that." I sipped. "More, actually." He sat quietly for a minute, like he wanted to argue, then slumped deeper into the couch. "I was wrong about a lot of things," he said. "About you. About this." He gestured vaguely at the villa. "I thought you'd never make it. Not without connections." I raised an eyebrow. "Because sound systems require hedge fund backing?" He almost smiled. "Almost. You were always better than me at building stuff," he said. I just didn't want to admit it. That one hit differently. Because the Evan I knew wouldn't admit fault if you had him on camera holding a smoking gun and a confession note. Still, a decade of mockery doesn't get wiped away by one frostbitten apology. He finished his coffee in silence, then looked up again. "Could I stay for Just a couple of nights? Until I figure things out? I leaned back, stared at him for a long moment. Depends. On what? I smiled. Are you okay sleeping in the garage? To his credit, Evan didn't argue. Didn't scoff. Didn't act offended. He just nodded slowly and said, Fair enough. That's how I knew things were really bad. Because old Evan? 10 years ago, Evan? He would have laughed, said something like, Are you serious? Or, Come on, man, I'm not a car battery. But this version? He followed me to the garage. Now, when I say garage, I don't mean some dusty oil-stained shack with a single dangling light bulb and a rusty fridge from 2003. No. This was my garage. Radiant heated floors. Acoustic foam panels. Smart thermostat. A leather couch I kept in the corner for client consultations, or naps after long nights working on builds. Flat screen on the wall. Mini fridge stocked with energy drinks and sparkling water. A Murphy bed I installed last year for the occasional late shift crash. Basically, the garage was nicer than most people's first apartments. Evan looked around and gave a small, humorless chuckle. You really turned this into something. I just tossed him a clean towel and said, Showers through the back. Try not to cry in it too loud. The neighbors will think I adopted a sad musician. That got the first real smirk I'd seen in years. The next morning, I woke up to a strange sound, silence. No espresso grinder. No Bruno pacing around. No distant Spotify from the garage. I found Evan outside, shoveling the front walkway. Badly. It looked like a raccoon had tried to fight the snow into submission. What are you doing? I asked, blinking through the steam of my coffee. Helping? He said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a sleeve that was definitely not meant for manual labor. You missed half the steps. I'm pacing myself. Are you pacing, or just pretending to be helpful for rent-free optics? He dropped the shovel and leaned on it like a tired lumberjack from a shampoo commercial. Why do you always have a comeback? Why do you always set them up so easily? Another smirk. This one almost reached his eyes. We stood there for a moment, snowflakes drifting around us, our breath fogging in the air like ghosts of unspoken things. Later that day, he wandered into the workshop side of the garage, where I was midway through wiring a custom amp under a Mustang's trunk lining. You ever think about hiring someone? He asked casually, leaning on the counter. Not unless they can solder blindfolded and tune audio frequencies by ear. He nodded. Cool. So, not me. I gave him a look. Not even close. He nodded again, slowly. Just checking. I knew what that meant. I could see it starting already, the part where he'd float the idea of staying longer. Maybe offer to help out. Say things like, could learn the ropes. That kind of language. But I didn't bite. Because I wasn't ready to let him slip back into my life like nothing had happened. Later that night, we made pasta. Mostly because it was the only thing he remembered how to cook without a delivery app. Do you remember that Christmas? I asked casually. When you told Grandma I'd probably end up selling hubcaps on the side of the road? He winced. Yeah. You were 17. I thought it was funny. She cried. He went quiet. I didn't push further. Just let it sit there in the space between boiling water and distant memories. Eventually, he muttered. I was a jackass. You still kind of are. I'm working on it. Another pause. Then he looked up. Why'd you let me in? I shrugged. Maybe because the guy who mocked me for a decade looked like a half-frozen lost delivery man. He smiled, but it faded fast. I didn't know where else to go. He said again. I called a few people. I raised an eyebrow. He hesitated. I called Mom and Dad. He admitted. Twice. They didn't answer. I wasn't shocked. I just waited. And I called Liz. His ex. She dumped him a year ago, right after he lost his job, when the finance prodigy glow started to fade and the real Evan started to emerge. She picked up. Said she hoped I was well. Then hung up. Oof. He stared at his plate, twirling noodles like they might spell out a lifeline if he spun them fast enough. I didn't offer advice. I didn't say. It gets better. I just said. Dishwasher's on the left. Don't overload it. It throws a tantrum. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't sure what I felt. Pity? Satisfaction? Maybe both. But one thing was clear, this wasn't going to be just a weekend. Evan didn't just lose his job. He lost his glow. His identity. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see who I'd become in the years he ignored me. 3 days into Evan's unexpected exile at my place, he started acting like a guest who forgot to leave. You know the type. Starts asking where the cinnamon is, remembers that he used to love these mugs, and suddenly has opinions about how I organize my spice drawer. I didn't say anything. Yet. I figured it was like a wounded animal licking its pride. He needed time. Or space. Or maybe a manual on how to act like a decent sibling. But then, on Wednesday morning, it happened. The ping. My phone buzzed once. Then again. And again. 12 rapid vibrations, like a heart monitor for bad decisions. I checked the screen. The family group chat. European fam bam adventure, wedding week clinking glasses. New messages. I had muted that chat a decade ago, but the name alone still made my jaw tighten. I scrolled. Photos. Candids of our parents in Italy. Mom posing next to a stone fountain. Dad was holding a spritz and pretending he liked it. Captioned. Best view in Florence. And no stress. Tangerine sun. Another one, our aunt tagging everyone, including Evan. Missing someone here. Eyes winking face. My name? Not even mentioned. Not even as a wish you were here. Or Jordan would love this. Evan was frowning next to me, scrolling too. He hadn't been tagged either. They didn't answer when I called. He said again, mostly to himself. Guess they're too busy enjoying that stress-free spritz. I muttered. He stared at the photos. I thought they'd care. You mean now that you're not the golden child with a gold MX? He winced. I mean, yeah. Later that afternoon, he finally said it. I didn't know they'd ice me out this fast. You didn't think they'd ever ice you out? I corrected. He didn't argue. He just looked small, not in a pathetic way, just stripped down. Like the suit had come off, and underneath wasn't the success story. Just Evan. My brother. The one I used to play video games with until 2 a.m. The one who once stuck a "kick me" note on my backpack in 6th grade and swore it was just a social experiment. That night, he helped with dinner again. Didn't make jokes about my knives or my minimalist fridge. Instead, he said, You ever talk to them anymore? I paused. Stirred the sauce. Nope. Why not? I turned off the stove. You know how many times they came to visit me here? He shook his head. 0. You know how many times they texted me on my birthday since I left? Another shake. 1. 2 years ago. Mom sent me a meme. It said, Happy birthday, you old fart. No name. No call. Just a meme. He blinked. Wow. Yeah. I didn't say it to guilt him. I said it because I finally could. Because the air was different now. Less thin. For once, I wasn't the one sitting at the kiddie table of our family's attention span. The next morning, it snowed hard. Evan offered to help dig out the driveway, again, and I let him. Not because I needed help, but because I think he needed to feel useful. Halfway through, I brought out coffee in travel mugs. He sat on the porch steps, cheeks red, gloves soaked, sipping like it was the best thing he'd had in weeks. I don't know who I am without their approval, he admitted suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. I used to call Mom after every promotion, he continued. Even for little wins. And now... He trailed off. They didn't answer, I said. He nodded. It's like, they only loved me when I was useful. I didn't say anything. Because that sentence hit way too close to home. He looked over. Was I ever like that with you? I looked him dead in the eye. Worse. He flinched. There. I sipped my coffee. But you're here. Which means you're out of backup plans. He smirked. An espresso. Also that night, I noticed something strange. Evan had changed my contact name in his phone. From bro to Jordan. Just my name. No emoji. No label. And somehow, that said more than any speech ever could. The thing about silence? It doesn't last long. Especially with our family. It was the 4th day since Evan arrived. The storm had mostly cleared. Bruno was snoring in the corner like he'd finally accepted Evan wasn't a burglar. And I was midway through drafting a client invoice when I heard Evan's phone buzz 3 times in quick succession. Then he froze. I didn't even look up until I heard him whisper, "It's Mom." That got my attention. He stared at the screen like it might bite him. "Are you gonna pick up?" He hesitated. "What if it's just to ask about the wedding photos?" "Then hang up." He sighed and answered, "Hey, Mom, yeah. I'm fine. I'm at." He glanced at me, then stood and walked into the kitchen. Bruno raised one eye like he was also eavesdropping. I tried not to listen. I really did. But I couldn't help catching the tone. Soft. Deflective. Defensive. Then, loud enough for me to hear clearly. "No, I didn't tell him yet." My fingers paused on the keyboard. "Tell me what exactly?" The call ended a few minutes later. He came back in, acting casual, like he hadn't just been talking to the woman who hadn't returned my messages in a decade. "So, Mom says hi," he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "To me? Or to her former tax deduction?" He cracked a smile but didn't bite. Instead, he sank into the armchair across from me, cradling his phone like it might break from guilt. "What didn't you tell me?" I asked. He froze. That's when I knew something was off. He didn't spill it right away. Instead, he deflected. Said he was tired. Said he'd shovel again tomorrow. Even offered to finally vacuum out Bruno's fur corner. By dinner, I'd stopped asking. If he didn't want to talk, I wasn't going to beg. But right before bed, he knocked on my office door. I looked up. He held a folded piece of paper. "What's that?" "My last secret," he said, tone flat. I took it. Unfolded it. And then I saw it. A printout of an email. From our father. Subject line: "Need to talk about the villa situation." Body: "Evan, if you're staying at Jordan's, remind him that technically, the villa was bought with our help. If he gives you trouble, mention the trust paperwork. He'll remember. Might make him rethink how he treats family. Also, we need to talk about adding your name to the paperwork, in case he bolts." I stared at it. Then back at Evan. "You knew about this?" He shook his head quickly. No, I didn't until after I arrived." "He sent it while I was here." I narrowed my eyes. "Why'd you keep it?" "Because I didn't want to believe they'd pull that crap. Again. And yet, here we are." He looked genuinely panicked now. "Jordan," I didn't reply. "I swear. I'm not here to take anything. I'm just here." He slumped onto the couch. "They think I can manipulate you," he muttered. "Like it's still 2007. Like I still matter enough to twist you. You did once." "I know." Silence. Then I grabbed the paper. Folded it neatly. Dropped it into the fireplace. And watched it burn. Evan stared, wide-eyed. "You're not mad?" "Oh, I'm furious," I said calmly. "But not at you." "Then who?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood up, grabbed my laptop, opened a file folder labeled Deed and Trust, and clicked. I turned the screen toward him. There, underlined in bold, was a scanned line that read, "This property is solely owned by Jordan Reese. No liens. No co-signers. No beneficiaries." "Dad didn't know I refinanced last year," I said. "Paid off the mortgage in full. Removed their name from anything that ever touched this address." Evan blinked. "You never told them?" "Nope." "Why?" I smiled faintly. "Because I wanted to see what they'd try next." He sat back, letting out a breath he'd clearly been holding all day. Then, softly, "I don't think I can go back to them." I nodded. "That's the thing about pedestals. Once you fall off, they don't have room for you at the bottom." 2 days passed after Evan showed me that email. Things got weirdly peaceful. We worked on a client build together, him holding wires, me soldering. He didn't mess anything up. In fact, he asked questions like he actually wanted to learn. He even managed to help without bragging once. It was the strangest version of my brother I'd ever seen. Until Friday morning. We were halfway through rerouting a trunk subwoofer when my phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Groceries plus salt bags, 10 a.m. I threw on a coat, told Evan I'd be back in an hour. When I returned, there was a rental car in the driveway. And standing on my porch, bundled up like they were doing a magazine shoot for rich people surviving winter, were my parents. My mother was holding a Tupperware container, lasagna maybe. Dad stood behind her like a backup singer for guilt. I parked slowly. Got out. They didn't smile. They didn't wave. Just watched. Like they were waiting for me to say thank you for showing up unannounced at a house they once pretended I didn't own. I walked past them and opened the door. They followed without asking. Still not much of a hugger, Dad muttered, stepping inside. Still not much of a texter, I replied. My mom placed the container on the counter. We just thought we'd stop by. Check on you boys. I blinked. You flew back from Italy to check on us? She gave a tight smile. We were already flying through the States. Just a detour. Translation: they found out their trust play failed. Evan appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. Hey, he said, voice dry. Dad didn't even pretend to greet him. He just launched in. We're here because there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, please, I said. Is this the part where you pretend the email was AI generated? Don't be dramatic, Mom snapped. You literally tried to assign my house like it was a group project. Dad cleared his throat. Look, Jordan, families help each other. We thought if Evan needed a place, and you had one, it was only fair. Fair? I barked a laugh. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about freshman year, when you told me college wasn't in the budget, 2 weeks before buying Evan a new SUV. That SUV was used. Still had the dealership tags. My mom held up a hand. We didn't come to rehash the past. Of course not, I said. Because the past doesn't serve you anymore. Evan stepped in. I didn't show him the email to start drama, he said quietly. I showed him because I didn't want to be part of it anymore. Mom turned to him, shocked. You're siding with him? I'm staying with him. Not stealing from him. You think we're thieves? Dad snapped. No, I said. Thieves at least admit they took something. They went quiet. Then Mom tried one last time. Jordan, we made mistakes. But we're still your parents. We still love you. You loved a version of me that never existed, I said. The quiet one. The one who didn't ask for anything. The one who kept your image tidy. Dad's face twisted. You think you're better than us now? Because you've got some fancy garage and lake views? No, I said calmly. I think I'm safer without you. They left without finishing the lasagna. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't hug Evan. Didn't even close the front gate. Just backed out of the driveway like it was someone else's property. Because it was. Later that night, Evan knocked on my door. He looked nervous. Sweaty. I got a call, he said. From Mom? No. From a friend. Former colleague. There's a startup in Boulder. Early stage fintech. They need someone to consult. Short-term contract. It's something. You thinking of taking it? He hesitated. It starts Monday. I need to crash in town. Figure things out. I nodded. That's fair. He looked at me for a second, then said, Thank you. For not throwing me out. For letting me see who you really are. I smiled. And who's that? He laughed quietly. The only adult in the family. Evan left on a Sunday morning. No grand farewell. No speech. Just 2 mugs of black coffee, a pat on Bruno's head, and one last snow-cleared path from the garage to the car. Don't let the amp board overheat, he warned, half smirking as he zipped his duffel. Don't let Boulder eat you alive, I replied, handing him a pack of granola bars I knew he'd forget to buy for himself. We stood there in the driveway, two grown men who used to scream over who got the TV remote. He looked at me one last time. "You sure you're okay with this? With you leaving? With all of it?" I took a breath. "I don't know if I forgive everything. But I think I believe you're not that guy anymore." He nodded slowly. Then he climbed into the beat-up Subaru he borrowed from one of my neighbors and drove off, tires crunching over the last traces of winter. I didn't hear from him for a week. No calls. No texts. I figured it meant he was working. Or maybe just finally breathing on his own. Then, on a Thursday night, my phone buzzed. "Evan." Client signed. "I'm in. It's not flashy, but it's mine." And then, P.S. I fixed the espresso grinder before I left. It was rattling. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen for a moment, wondering when the last time I felt this still. Then I tapped out 2 words. "Me. You're good." And meant it. The next week, I got a letter. Real envelope. Real paper. No return address. Inside was a short note. "Jordan. We stopped by the villa while you were out. Just wanted to talk. We understand now that things have changed. We won't interfere again. Your father still believes things should have gone differently. But I see that you made a life. One that doesn't need our approval. Or permission. Be well. Mom." Folded behind the note, a photo. It was old. One I hadn't seen in years. Me and Evan. Ages maybe 6 and 8. Covered in dirt, holding toy cars in front of Dad's old garage. The back of the photo said, "The only time you both agreed on anything, the blue one was faster." I sat with it for a long time. Because here's the thing they never tell you. Revenge feels good. But peace? Peace feels earned. Not given. Not begged for. Earned, over late nights, cold mornings, and the sound of your past knocking on your door, only to walk away better than it arrived. Bruno barked at something outside. I walked to the window and saw a delivery van. The guy stepped out, holding a clipboard. I opened the door and smiled. "Let me guess," I said. "You're not my brother, are you?" The delivery guy blinked. No, sir." "Perfect," I said, signing. "Then we're good."